introduce the. Thank you all for coming this evening. This is Tuesday, May 13th. This is the second Tuesday speaker series with One Pair States. One Pair States has been around since 2009, 2010. We've been working on the theory of change that the most likely pathway to get to enhanced and improved and expanded Medicare for all is likely to take place through the modeling of such a plan at the state level. This is the way that Canada got to national Medicare for all. This is the way numerous other countries with federalist constitutional systems have accomplished the same. As well, this is our history of how we've been able to enact most of our social, economic, and political reforms, is modeling it at the state level. And as an historian and as a former U.S. Senate candidate running on single payer in Pennsylvania, we've been working together to apply these lessons. One Pair States 5 years ago converted ourselves to a 501c4 organization, and we reorganized ourselves into work groups. So for folks who are new to this space, if you're interested in any number of these work groups, you can participate as a volunteer. We're always looking for new blood, for new ideas. We have work groups on communications, education and advocacy, policy, organization and development. And yeah, this is a great space for folks who want to participate and do things that fit your interests, that suit your needs. As well, we always accept donations for the work that we do. We're an all-volunteer organization with the exception of a part-time communications director, Simon Hutton, who's just come back from a long trip to Asia. And we're ramping up right now, preparing for the relaunch of our state-based Universal Healthcare Act. It's it'll be introduced in the House by Representative Ro Khanna. It'll be reintroduced in the Senate by Ed Markey for the first time. We got a Senate bill last session. We're very excited about that. We got 30 co-sponsors in the House. We had 3 in the Senate, and we need to build out on that. So we're always looking for support and activism, ideas, and participation. The focus for tonight's meeting is really a continuation of an ongoing discussion, but it's going to go deeper, and that is building out a strategy that will help us to accomplish our goals. And what is our goal? It's not simply to get national Medicare for all, but it's also to get justice for all Americans. We call it health and healthcare justice for all. So it's all issues, the intersection of all the issues with healthcare. Of course, that means housing, climate, education, and so forth. And so our organization is taking the lead here and pushing hard to get our movement and other movements to adopt this approach, which we'll be talking about this evening. I've shared this a few times with a number of folks in the room. This would be a little bit repetitious for folks, but it always, I think, bears repeating important concepts that we're going to talk about. And then in the second half of the presentation, Rob Kall, my dear friend, who is publisher of OpEdNews. I've known Rob since 2004, I believe. I met Rob at the Wellstone Action organizing meeting as I was ramping up my own U.S. Senate race in Pennsylvania. And Rob and I have been very close communicating. Rob publishes a lot of my articles, and we've collaborated on a number of things over the years. And right now, probably our most exciting project that Rob will be talking about is building the infrastructure that's necessary to deliver on the theory of change, on the strategy that I'll be introducing. So just to start out by saying that our goal here is to get the State-Based Universal Healthcare Act, sometimes referred to as SBUCA, passed in the next 3 to 5 years. And that sets the stage for modeling at the state level. We have numerous states that are very close to getting to universal healthcare systems, including California, Oregon, Washington, Minnesota, Maine, New York, Massachusetts, and others. Colorado. When you start the list, I always leave folks out, but the point is that we've got a number of states in our consortium of 25 states that are approaching delivering on creating a universal healthcare system. The State-Based Universal Healthcare Act is designed to allow states that have created that system to bring the federal healthcare dollars back to their states to create a robust one-payer or single-payer funding mechanism. Until you have that efficiency of funding, most of you are familiar with it. The idea here is to streamline funding in order to get to true comprehensive universal health care at the state level, guaranteed. As well, states are beginning to collaborate. Part of the legislation is encouraging folks or states to work with each other on cross-border issues having to do with people who live in one state and they work in the other state. Resolve those issues, allow states to engage in bulk purchasing of equipment, pharmaceuticals, what have you. So there's a lot of great work happening in the states, and frankly, it's like Gil Scott-Heron says, this revolution will not be televised. It's not going to be covered in the mainstream media until it's a real thing, until it's actually happened. So what I'm going to do now is just lay out the mechanisms and the ideas that are going to be necessary to get us to Medicare for all in 7 years, U.S. comprehensive universal justice. That's all areas of justice in 25 years, in a generation, and then visioning out this way that we think globally in 50 years. And this process begins, as I'm going to show you a PowerPoint here. I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint and go through it very quickly, but I will happily share it with folks and you can look at it in your own leisure time. But just to take a look at this PowerPoint, that really 16 steps that we this is the product of numerous conversations I've had, especially during the period of the pandemic. When we were all locked down, I made a point of having regular conversations with organizing friends, and we put together a strategy building network or a group that met most Sundays during the pandemic called the Justice for All Network. And this is one of the products of the work that we did that I'm going to be sharing with you. Share. So this is what we call the 16 steps for achieving the Justice for All agenda. What are these steps? So I'm going to go through the steps. And again, our goal is to get the SABUCA bill passed in the next 3 to 5 years in order for states to get the necessary waivers to create the most robust systems at the state level, and then build on that as a model for getting us to national Medicare for all, and then building out on that with numerous social justice partners that have helped us to get to universal health care, but also work to get to universal housing, quality food access, quality education, and so forth, universal basic income. So the first thing that we do with strategy building is what we call radically vision. And the idea behind this radical visioning comes from a reading and then a rereading of a book that I picked up when I was a teenager and then reread at the beginning of the pandemic called Looking Backward by Edward Bellamy, Looking Backward. And it's the story of a protagonist who goes to sleep. He's put to sleep in 1888, and he wakes up in the year 2000. He goes to sleep in dystopian Boston, and he wakes up in utopian Boston. And he's stunned, state of disbelief. He finally comes around and realizes, okay, here I am in the year 2000, and we've accomplished this universal justice world, this utopian world. And he then begins to ask questions of his host. How did we do this? What did this look like? What were the steps necessary to win? And so Looking Backward, Edward Bellamy's Looking Backward actually is a great book to look at to understand how to build strategy. It begins with visioning the future. In this case, looking out 25 years or looking out 7 years for your healthcare, looking out 25 years for universal justice in the US, 50 years for the world. Realized that back in 1948, on December 10th, 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the basis for this conversation, was passed unanimously by all countries of the world, December 10th, 1948. We need to get back to that moment and then update that notion of what constitutes human rights. It was a 30-point document. Eleanor Roosevelt was the lead author. Radically visioning is the future. What did it look like? We have to look to the future and then ask ourselves, what did that look like? Or what did it look like? And then begin to reverse engineer. So the next thing you do is you begin to ask these questions, reverse engineering the strategy and strategy-driven tactics that got us to that success. What is strategy? We have to ask the question, what is strategy? Because most folks think they're thinking strategically, think they're acting strategically, think that their ideas are strategic, but unless they're concrete, unless they're attached to a larger vision, it's really not strategy. One quick way of thinking about strategy is that strategy is the recipe and the tactics are the ingredients. So we have to think big picture with strategy and understand that all of our tactics, all the different steps that we take have got to be connected to that larger vision or that recipe. Fourth, it's important to do what many people are familiar with, the SWOT analysis or some variation there, right? So being self-aware, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities and threats in terms of yourselves, in terms of your organization, in terms of the movement, in terms of our connectivity between ourselves and other social justice movements. And again, it begins really with self-awareness and an honest discussion about where we are and what we need to do to improve what we're doing. So again, sort of we're drilling from the general to the particular. Number 5, 6, and 7, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, is that we need to join our justice-centered people. We need to identify other people who share our values and build relationships with them and build a common understanding of politics and how politics needs to work. And this is, again, what Rob is going to be talking about in some detail when I'm done here. And then comes the next thing, actually, the last thing that comes is our justice-centered policies. The policies, which are the prescriptions for delivering our what it is that constitutes our vision of a just world. So I just went through those, right? Building relationships that give us the basis for respect, trust, hope, empathy, and love. Organizing our social justice groups horizontally, getting ourselves out of silos, our sort of single issue vision and idea. We have to step back from that. Doesn't mean we have to do all the work everybody else is doing, but it does mean that we need to embrace all of these other justice efforts and campaigns in order to be successful. We have to pull our efforts together and do so collectively and intentionally. Number 7 here is linking what we call, or what we refer to in the Justice for All Network as existential issues, like big picture issues like climate, war, immigration, with issues that are really survival issues, daily justice issues that are just as important, because if you don't have a roof over your head, you can't do anything else. If you don't have quality food on your table, you can't really function or do anything else. If you can't pay your bills and so forth. So understanding the validity and the equal importance, really, of existential issues and daily justice issues. Number 8 is we need to, and we're not doing very good at this, but we have to really be working hard at this, is developing new leadership and decision-making models, bringing younger and more diverse people into this movement. And that work has got to be intentional. It's got to be focused. It's got to be welcoming. It's got to be meeting people where they are. For example, we've got Cheryl Stevenson with us, and I know other people are doing outreach with several, younger organizations, including Indivisible, Move On, and so forth. So that's the kind of work we need to do, is get into other people's spaces and work with them and meet them where they are. Number 9, we need to be conscious and intentional about our external dialogue. Our external dialogue, meaning engaging other people, speaking the language of other people, and in fact, having surrogates from those communities, representatives or peers from those communities, be the messenger, right? And speak in a way that's intentional and mostly focused on listening, right? We have 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason, I believe. So external dialogue means speaking in a way that your audience understands. And we're doing that in the healthcare space, being able to appeal with the State-Based Universal Healthcare Act to different audiences in Congress in order for us to get to 218 votes in the House, 51 in the Senate, and so forth. So external dialogue is very important, but just as important is internal dialogue, which means that often I see this, is that within our own organizations, we're not connecting, we're not speaking in a way that we're being understood. And that also needs to be respectful, clear, validating, and uplifting. So external dialogue, internal dialogue, communications, language choice, neutral language much as possible. One of the reasons we call ourselves one-payer states is one payer means the same thing as single payer, right? but it works. It doesn't alienate or scare people on Capitol Hill. That's why we chose that frame, one pair. Number 11, this is similar to the SWOT analysis. Identify, define, call in, call out supporters and non-supporters. In other words, be aware of the larger context of the environment, the organizations we're working with. If people aren't ready to have the conversation, move on to another organization or set of individuals who are ready to have that conversation and work with you. The reality is that we're building the train tracks. And when the train pulls out of the station, people are going to jump on board. But not to struggle and try to connect with people who don't want that conversation, don't want to have a discussion about strategy, but are willing to have it, want to have it. Work with the people who are ready to work, and then eventually others will come around. Number 12, organizational assessment, similar again to the SWOT analysis, just being aware of your organization, your strengths, weaknesses, what you can do better. Be clear about defining roles and responsibilities. Decision-making ideally should be bottom up where possible. But you need to make decisions in a timely fashion, and it's not always bottom up. But really to be conscious of your own organization. Now, number 13 is development. That's, fundraising, in-kind resources, volunteers, distribution, delegation, and management. The whole idea of being smart in the way you run your organization. Number 14, this is what I outlined at the beginning, getting the State-Based Universal Healthcare Act passed in the next 3 to 5 years. That's a short-term goal. Get states over the line. That's short to midterm. That's same time frame, and then getting us to national Medicare for all, a midterm or long-term goal, and then national universal is a longer-term goal. Global international is a longer-term goal. But the short-term victories build to the midterm, build to the long-term victories, and so forth. I'm almost done here, and as you're going along, measuring your successes, celebrating your successes, quantifying, qualifying your goals, defining what you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it, assessment, reassessment, accountability, and so forth. And then finally, bringing it all together, understanding that we won on the inside and on the outside. We won by working on the inside with inside power and on the outside. And right now, I'm going to be honest, it's very difficult as a lobbyist on Capitol Hill to get cooperation from folks who should be with us on the inside. This is a real big challenge, getting full cooperation of members of Congress and having them take us more seriously. And part of that is, of course, building a much more robust outside presence. But they have to work together, right? Inside and outside. There has to be collaboration. There has to be trust. You have to work together. And in order to win in the streets, the suites, offline, online, rural, suburban, exurban, urban America, in and out of all the capitals, local, county, state, national, international. That's what it looked like. So that's my strategic overview of the different elements that we need to deliver on. But the next thing we need to turn to and take a look at is the infrastructure. And that's where we're going to bring up Rob for some conversation. If you have questions right now, feel free to drop them in the chat as we go along. And I'm going to stop there. And we want most of the meeting tonight to be focused on your concerns, your ideas, your feedback, question and answer. I'm happy to go back over anything that you want to have highlighted from that, from that PowerPoint. But right now, I'd like to bring up our good friend Rob Kall to discuss the progressive infrastructure project that we're working on. Rob, thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. This started over 20 years ago. Shortly after I started OpEdNews, I started writing a series of articles because I discovered that the left doesn't have something really important that the right has had since the early 1970s. They have a policy development and promotion infrastructure and ecosystem that every year gets hundreds of millions of dollars, mostly from billionaires like the Cooks. And 20 years ago, I wrote about it. And I said, we need something like that on the left. And then the Center for American Progress came out, and I thought, well, that's the beginning. Maybe this is the beginning of something like that. But it really turned out it wasn't. It was a Clinton project run by John Podesta, who became Hillary's campaign manager, and now it's run by uh, what's her name, Nita Tanden, who was Obama's was worked for Obama, and they've really not done what it needs to be. And let me explain what it is. What the right has was started about over 50 years ago when Lewis Powell, a corporate attorney, created a memo on behalf of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, one of the most right-wing organizations out there. And what the memo basically envisioned was an infrastructure and an ecosystem consisting of think tanks and other organizations that would advance the goal of making it more profitable and easier for corporations, mainly getting rid of regulations, decreasing the size of government. And they've been doing this for 50 years. Now, after Trump was elected and Project 2025 started being put into effect, I realized that 20 years after I had written of that, nothing had been done, and we desperately need that. Let me give you a little bit of an idea of what this ecosystem looks like. First thing is think tanks. Now, the right has like the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is the organization that developed Project 2025. But there are a lot of other organizations as well, like the Federalist Society, which works to cultivate judges to be appointed. Democrats and the left doesn't have anything like that. They have a media ecosystem that is unbelievably powerful, and the left has almost nothing. Back in before Obama was elected, there was a progressive media summit meeting each year that was held at one of the Senate buildings, and I attended a number of those. That was killed probably by Rahm Emanuel when he came in as Obama's chief of staff initially. Rahm Emanuel is known for hating progressives, and so they killed it. But that was a little tiny piece of some kind of a progressive media project to help the progressive media and for enabling the progressive media to help politicians. When we would meet, we would meet with 25 U.S. senators and some of the House leaders like Pelosi and Steny Hoyer and John Conyers, and that was killed off. Just like they're going to try to fire Hogg right now. So the idea is there's a media ecosystem. Then there's the development of people to be elective candidates or appointees as judges. They do that by giving them jobs within this ecosystem, within the think tanks and the other organizations, and then they get them on television. They give them the credentials to get on television and in the media. They have state and local operations that generate legislations, model legislations that a lot of state senators literally take the legislation and without changing it all, submit it to become law. I think that what Lewis Powell envisioned was getting rid of all the impediments that legislation and the government has to corporations and to profits. I think what we would have if we created a left-wing version would be something that would shoot to change capitalism from predatory capitalism to nurturative capitalism or something along those lines. Another thing I think that the left could do that I don't think the right would be able to do is have fun. It could and create rituals and celebrations as part of this process. I wrote a book called Bottom Up Revolution, and one of the things that I learned in it was that one of the most important things is humans, before there were civilizations, they had an incredible awareness of how their behaviors affected the other people in their small hunter-gatherer group, usually under 100 people, and how it affected their environment, which they depended upon to live. And I call this connection consciousness. And I think that we need to develop something like that on the left so that we make it a part of our values, that we care about what other people are experiencing and how it's affecting the world. Now, it's 50 years and we don't have this. I've spoken to a number of politicians about this, and they all agree, yeah, this is really important. But then they go, yeah, but first we have to take care of 2026. And every time that's what they do. So for 50 years, we have not had that. We have not had a long-term vision and a systemic way of building policy and moving towards it. Now, Project 2025 is the ultimate development of this project on the right. And it is horrendous. But on the other hand, what they've done is they've put an awful lot of time and research into identifying ways that they can push the envelope and get away with doing the things that they want to do. And so what I've done in the last day or two is I've done some research on what it would look like if the left did something like what Trump was doing. And I want to get into that. That was a pretty fun exercise, really. But I want to show you, share a screen with a list of some of the ways that, oh, I thought I had it. Where'd it go? Here it is. Is it? Yeah, here we go. So how do I get rid of this other stuff? Okay, here we go. So this is a list of ways that the left has lost power and opportunity because they have not had a policy development and promotion infrastructure and ecosystem. And I can just quickly go through this. The economic and labor policy, the dominance of neoliberal economics, corporate allied think tanks normalize deregulation, privatization, and austerity, eroding New Deal Great Society frameworks, erosion of labor power, weak counter infrastructure allowed right to work laws in 27 states, and union membership declined from 24% to 10% of workers since 1973. Regressive tax policy. Top corporate tax rates fell from 48% to 21% since 1971. It was over 90% at one point. Legal and judicial landscape, corporate constitutional rights. Powell's Bilotti decision created corporate free speech. The doctrine later expanded in Citizens United. Federalist Society dominance, no progressive equivalent to the 70,000 member legal network that shaped the 6-3 Supreme Court majority. Media and narrative control, an incredibly powerful media conservative ecosystem with Fox News and Sinclair Broadcasting and talk radio dominating local and national narratives. Academic influence, funded programs in 350 universities versus limited progressive campus infrastructure. Policy implementation gaps, and this goes on and on. I got a list of 25 different ones here, all because we don't have the tools that the right wing has had for 50 years. We need to make that happen right away. And we can't make the excuse that first we have to take care of the next election, because that failed idea has not worked. And it's really hurt us in so many ways. So what Chuck and I and a number of others have been working on is putting together basically something that compares with the original Lewis Powell memo, a memo for a progressive ecosystem and infrastructure. And
oh no, where is she?
It's coming along. We're getting a really good, clear picture of what that could look like and how it could happen and how it could be funded. I did something today that was kind of fun that I think you might enjoy. I started looking into what would it look like if the left did something as aggressively as what the Trump administration is doing with Project 2025. And I came up with a list of some interesting things. One, revolutionary wealth confiscation, 99% marginal tax rates on over 10 million in income and on billion-dollar fortunes. I've written about 40 articles on how we need to de-billionaireize the planet. Church-state collision, revoke tax exemptions for religious institutions opposing LGBTQ and abortion rights, reallocating funds to gender-affirming care clinics. Constitutional guerrilla warfare, 28th Amendment, codify abortion, voting rights, and climate mandates via state ratification blitz, bypassing Congress. SCOTUS annihilation, expand court to 21 justices and impeach the originalists for ethics violations. Second Amendment nullification, executive order banning civilian AR-15 ownership using ATF reinterpretation of militia clauses. Debt jubilees, cancel municipal bonds for jurisdictions maintaining Confederate monuments or restrictive voting laws. Climate sanctions, EPA designation of oil gas states as national sacrifice zones, no federal disaster relief until decarbonization. Cultural revolution tactics, Patriot Act 2.0, FBI surveillance of MAGA groups as domestic terror cells with asset freezes modeled after post 9/11 protocols. Media decapitation, FCC revocation of Sinclair Fox licenses under public interest rules, transferring airwaves to DSA-aligned outlets. You get the idea. Trump's doing it. The left could do something like it as well. Only the difference would be Trump's doing it for him and his buddies and for corporations. We would be doing it for the people. And I'm not saying we're going to do that. I'm just saying we want to have a vision of what a world looks like that's really ideal. If a progressive dream can happen, what will it look like in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? Like the Bellamy book describes that Chuck mentioned. We can do this. And I really believe that it's going to happen. I've researched the amount of funding that the right has, and actually the left has more. Over $500 million a year in funding, but it goes to siloed organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center and the NAACP and ACLU, and Center for American Progress gets $50 million a year. We can do this. So I'll stop there. Any comments or questions? I can stop sharing too. How do I stop sharing?
Okay. Thanks.
Mike,
Thanks,
can
Rob.
you turn the sharing off? I don't know how to do that.
Let's see. Mike, do you know how to grab the stop share? Let's see, on your screen, you don't see a button for stop share, Rob?
Probably down at the bottom, a little red button says stop share.
Stop
be.
share.
My screen is up on the top.
It was at the top of my screen.
Probably depends on the computer. Thanks, Rob, for that. Really.
I'll mention one other thing. In developing scenarios, and that include lists of issues that are very popular that should be included in putting this together, universal health care is usually the first one.
Yeah, and universal basic income also for those who are keeping score at home. That alone would create millions of activists available to fight for all these issues. Universal basic income. There are a ton of issues that we could be tackling and talking about. But let's work through the queue. I'm going to take us off of shared screen. This is now a group discussion, Mike. So if you can bring us into the larger group.
Okay.
Thank you. Mike.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so we'll start with Carla, then Cheryl, then Catherine, then Barbara. And keep your, if you could, keep whatever comment or question you have brief so we can get through a lot of discussion. Thank you so much. Carla from
Okay,
Minnesota.
mine is quick. This is Carla in Minnesota, and I think most of you recognize that we are a blue state. We've been blue for many years, but and what you were all talking to me about sounds like the years when I belonged to One World. Probably some of you don't even remember that organization back in the early 60s when we were One World. I think it's still out there internationally. But when I was hearing you say the left and being Minnesota is blue, I doubt that very many of those Minnesota DFLers are going to say they're left. They don't want to be left. They're moderate. So I'm wondering how you're ever going to come up with some kind of compromise there with those
You're
almost
absolutely
full-time
right,
Democrats.
Paula. You're absolutely right. The description is a challenge to come up with the right one that works. But I don't want this to be a project that is for centrists. I want it to be more progressive. I want it to, and when you look at the issues that we've identified that would be like the core issues, they're ones that polls have showed that 60 to 75% of the people approve of and want.
What are a few of those issues, Rob? And I would just add also to Carla's point, whenever I'm pushed to the question, I identify myself as a social democrat. It's the most neutral way of bringing the conversation forward, honestly. And Bernie Sanders in Europe would be a social democrat. He would be a centrist in Europe. So I think that's a way to talk about it. Call yourself a social democrat. I think that works, in the way that we use one payer as a substitute for single payer. Thanks for that, Carl. Rob, what are some of the top issues that you can unify the like really consensus issues for the nation? Healthcare?
Healthcare is one. Access to housing is another. Support of families like family leave and childcare are others. Environment. Protecting democracy and the vote, just to name a few of them.
Yeah. And once you deliver on economic stability, things become so much easier at that point. Once people feel economically stable, right? I think that was a genius of FDR with his economic Bill of Rights. We'll go to Cheryl and then Catherine and Barbara. Cheryl?
It is just a comment. I think the organizational stuff, the equivalent to Federal Society and all that you're talking about is terrific work. And I love what you said about it. And I would love a copy of what your outline that you have done here. I don't know if you feel proprietary about it or anything, but I'd love to have it.
We've been working on this, and frankly, I've generated a book's worth of material, and we really have to narrow it down so that it's literally a memo for starters. There's a lot of other research. Like, for example, there's a question, do you take money from corporations? I think that you want to have a policy that teaches corporations how to be good citizens. And so that means that you get corporations that sign on to a set of rules about how they operate and function. And that should be a part of what we're doing, is rewarding corporations for doing the right thing, and with the carrot, and then taking a stick to them. And for example, we got to get rid of corporate personhood. We got to get Citizens United. But within that, we're not going to get rid of corporations. What we want them to do, you don't take a kid who misbehaves and throw him out when he's a child. You teach him how to behave, and you reward him for behaving the right way. That's a thought that I think is a doable thing, and I think it's already done in some other countries, and we have a lot to learn from other countries.
I think raising corporate personhood is a good idea. People can learn about Buckley, and it's not, you're talking about the Powell thing. Just go back a little farther.
1892, I think it was.
I thought it was 70s, whatever.
Corporate personhood was made back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what you're talking about back in,
Sorry, Barbara.
We lost the sound.
There was a person ahead of you.
I was just adding to the corporate personhood because it wasn't in the decision, it was in the margins. That's all.
Yes,
I
yes.
can wait. It's
The
fine.
secretary.
It was a Santa Clara decision of around 1885, the Santa Clara decision. It was a footnote. You're right.
Yes.
And Tom Hartman wrote an entire
Written
book on it.
by
Oh,
a guy
Buckley
who
versus
went,
Vallejo.
it was written by a guy who went from being a president of a railroad to a secretary at the Supreme Court.
Now, wasn't that Buckley versus Vallejo in 1870s? I thought so.
That may be it. Yeah, maybe I'm off by a couple decades.
In any case, there's one place to start with corporation accountability actually is Better World Shopping. I'll drop the link in the chat. But my premise has always been every dollar you spent is a political decision. Every dollar you spend. Drop Amazon like a rock. Just drop it. You got to get off of that stuff. Stop feeding the monster. Catherine, you're up, and then Barbara.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks. And I had a question. When you were talking, you wanted to increase the Supreme Court justices to 21, which I agree we need to increase them. But what made you choose 21? And the other comment, I guess, is I really think there needs to be something like ALEC for progressive legislation. Someplace where all people can get advice and get pull language and stuff. And anyway, I have another question, but I'll stop there. So
21 is no magic number. If it was 21, that would clearly, it would take over a generation for other politicians to replace them. So but that's not, the number's not that important. It could be other numbers as well.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Barbara?
Yeah, I just feel that it's very critical. Progressives, from my experience and living in Ithaca, they seem to stay in their cubicles and they don't reach out across ethnic, class, and cultural boundaries. And if we're going to create change, we've got to bring people into the movement, by listening and forming relationships. If we don't do that, we are not much different than the right in some ways. They live in their own little world. And I think it's very critical that we do that if we want to create change. And I'll leave it here.
That's why I think that one thing that we on the left could do that they don't do on the right is party and celebrate. And look at all these people that are coming out for the demonstrations in the last month or two. What's being done with them? How is all that energy and all of those people being plugged into any kind of a system? It's not. It's nice that Bernie and AOC are going around the country and getting big crowds, but they're really not really taking advantage of the opportunity there to get names and to bring people together further.
But you're not going to get rural areas and working class and sometimes people of color. They're not going to be able to go to those, to demonstrations and rallies because they've got to earn a living.
Yeah.
So it's about reaching out and forming relationships and even using storytelling.
Absolutely. And there needs to be specific effort to reach out to each of those demographics that you described.
Yes.
That could be part of it. On the right, their interest is advocating for corporations, getting rid of regulations, getting rid of accountability. What we need to do is take care of people. And we have to identify the different populations. I really believe, I recently did a little research and I found out that people who drive pickup trucks, they vote 65 to 75% Republican.
Yeah.
But we should have them. They should be with us, not with these. They're getting screwed royally, and they don't know it. And it's because of the effectiveness of the messaging and the media that the right has. We should be going after all of them. The idea that people of the Islamic faith voted for Trump because they thought that he would do better for them than a Democrat, that's incredible. I mean, and now we're seeing the reality of that.
Right.
And
And it's
because of
so
a massive failure of communication by the leadership of the Democratic Party.
and we need to listen. We need to listen and learn why these communities are doing what they do, and then take that information and develop a message geared for them.
That was my entire presentation. That's why I went first and then brought in Rob to give the infrastructure. So, I mean, honestly, I think I addressed those probably more detail, but I gave you that. At least
We're on the same page.
Yeah. So let's work. So the idea here is to bring those concepts together with the infrastructure, right? They can't work without each other. That's the point. Don McCann, then Casey, then Michelle, then Michael. Again, brief comment or question. Thanks, Don. Good to see you.
Yes. I put in the chat a link to a very important article by Hayden Brookley. And the article is that, as everyone knows, a Medicare for All insurance program is not adequate because of all the deficiencies we have with the insurance industry taking over and diverting profits to their system, and the various intermediaries that are taking tremendous amount of money out of the system. Hayden Brookley explains how public provisioning can correct this problem, and that refers to community hospitals, community health centers, and so forth. And we can gradually move into a public provisioning approach that will remove the private, well, not remove the private insurance, but put them in an unfavorable competitive position. Anyway, the article is kind of complex, but it is well worth reading, and everyone should download it, even if you don't read it immediately, because the concept is, I think, very important if we expect to have a future healthcare system that works for everyone.
Thanks for flagging that, Don. Appreciate it. Yeah. For folks, just if you don't know, just click on the hyperlink and that'll bring it up into your browser. And then you can read it at your leisure. Thanks, Don. Great to see you, brother.
Good. Before anybody leaves, I just want to let you know, if you're interested in working on this project with me or in any way, if you want to get updates on it, my email is happier@gmail.com. happier@gmail.com. And my name's Rob Kall, Kall.
Can you put it in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, of course. I'm doing it at gmail.com. That's
Thanks, Chuck.
Rob Kall. And remember also track him over at OpEdNews.com. So those are two ways of connecting with Rob, directly, indirectly. You know, Marta writes a lot of articles over there, as do I. Let's see, Casey, where are you from? Casey Leonardon, is that right? Casey, welcome. Casey.
Yes, I'm from Boston.
Boston. All right. Welcome into the house.
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone. I was actually what Barbara said. I wanted to follow up with that.
Part of it.
Yes, the issue of not including diversity. I am a person of color. At the same time, I am also an activist in issues to do with disability, elderly, veterans, and other issues such as housing.
Beautiful.
Now, in Massachusetts here, it was Massachusetts that started the the universal health care from the late Ted Kennedy, Senator. We have it here where you must have a health insurance, but it is not completely functionable.
Right.
Because we have a lot of people coming from other states to use that benefit. Like if you come into our state, you claim like homeless, you will automatically get Medicaid, And with that is also affecting Massachusetts' economy greatly. However, what Barbara was saying in the politics part, because I'm very much into healthcare, is really not well enough, especially when it comes to women of color in the healthcare system. It's very poor. I gotta say that very well. Everywhere in the United States, women of color suffer more when it comes to healthcare system and not providing them equal healthcare. A lot of women of color die from childbirth, cancer. There's a lot of issues. But the Democrats, I have to be honest with you, what Barbara said is absolutely true. The Democrats that we have now is focused on the wealthiest. I come from the state that's supposed to be the headquarters of Democrats, liberal. I can tell you for facts, being an activist, that our liberal we have here are worse than the Republicans. They are very racist. They are they're not diverse. And as a result, they have lost a lot of minorities, including me. After what they did to Joe Biden, I left. Not to Republican, but to independent. And a lot of minorities are becoming independent because as an activist, I'm also in the local politics. When you talk to minorities, they said that Democrats is not doing anything for them.
Right.
So,
yeah, I was going to respond, Casey, and all your points are extremely valid. And just so you know, One Pair of States is nonpartisan. And the way we go about our work is we connect with people on the basis of our values and our issues. And that's how we connect and build out coalitions. And the problem in Massachusetts, I think you've identified the bill that was passed, Romney Care, then became the basis of Obamacare. Now it was nationalized Romney Care, and it put insurance industry profits at the top. They basically they didn't suffer at all. And the social welfare programs in Massachusetts were suffering additionally to subsidize Romney Care. But your question, do you have a specific question that we can help you with? And because we want to build out here a vision that gets us to truly racially equal, race equity centered healthcare, as well as gender-based healthcare, comprehensive guaranteed healthcare for all across the board. That's our goal. And until we are able to get to that, it's very difficult to address many of the problems that you're raising right now. Is there anything more that you want to share?
well, the question is, how do you plan on getting to that end where everyone in United States will be comfortable with their healthcare instead of cussing the healthcare people out? Because right now it has become a corporate business.
Absolutely.
And no longer American people.
Yeah. Those are all and in particular, Boston is getting crushed by the private equity firm. There's some feedback happening. I know that Ed, working with Ed, there's some feedback. Is that coming from me? Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren have introduced the Health Over Wealth Act. You might take a look at that. It's an effort to rein in the private equity problem that's destroying, in particular, the Boston area hospitals. These are private equity firms that reach across the globe, and when they take losses across the globe, they drain the resources out of your local hospitals. So there are a lot of problems related here. It's a longer conversation, but we're very conscious about, I think, what you're raising here, and let's keep having this conversation. Give me a holler at I'll give you my phone number and my email. We can talk further.
Okay.
But we want to keep moving through the queue here. But thank you,
Okay.
Casey. Thank you for
Thank
being with us. We got Michael up, and then we've got looks like Helen next. Michael Pan. Hey, Michael, welcome back.
Okay, how you doing?
All right, brother, be well. What's
Yeah,
up?
so yeah, Casey Lauren brought a good, interesting points about, about racial minorities, in particular,
Sure.
Black Americans, right? How they have a highest mortality rates compared to any other racial groups, due to centuries of racism, um, slavery, and white supremacy, and also because of the medical institution. Because yes, having universal healthcare is great, but it is not enough to address anti-black racism in this country because it's been embedded, since the 1500s. Because if we have universal healthcare, a lot of healthcare providers are not going to treat black patients the same as with non-black patients because of the biases, racism in the medical profession. So that's why I think what Casey was saying, that yes, that's why Democrats lost, because they don't have a specific agenda for a particular group. It's great to do universal policies. I'm not discounting that, but then you're going to have to focus on. There's going to have to be both targeted and universal, because the racial wealth gap is so big. When the racial wealth gap is so big, that means Black Americans don't live as long as with I'm sorry, their life expectancy is much shorter than non-black groups because of the racism embedded in this country. And that's why it's very difficult to get to universal health care, and why
Right.
cash payment reparations have to be part of the conversation. Because if cash payment reparations is going to lift all Black Americans out of poverty, and it's going to increase their life expectancy. So I just wanted to address that earlier. And then
Yeah.
and the question I have is this, right? And in case you brought this up, that's true that Americans that's true that most Americans are very comfortable with their private health insurance coverage, even they know the private system is broken. But there's this phrase I learned: if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? How do we move, especially at the state level? Because I know polling for that I know that the support for universal health care at the state level is strong. That is great, but sometimes the support for it fluctuates. So how do we maintain and build that support every day, every year, so that eventually we can implement universal health care without doing so much messaging?
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. We have a lot of work to do. And I guess that the answer to your earlier part that continues to address what Casey was asking, and Rob, I want you to step in too if you want to jump up. You're one of our presenters tonight. Is that we're committed not simply to healthcare justice, but to health justice. And that addresses all aspects of health, and including racism and xenophobia and misogyny. So it's a cultural shift. This requires a cultural shift, and it's not going to happen overnight. But the point is that we have to have a vision for that, let's just say, for lack of a better term, utopian future where we all get along, we all see each other as co-equals, we all embrace one another as humans, and we all see the value of a universal declaration of human rights and embrace everything that constitutes a true quality of life for everyone in the world. That's going to take a lot of work for sure. Let's just keep this conversation going 100%. But
Yeah,
what
I do have something to say.
Yeah,
One
Rob,
thing
go ahead.
that needs to be done is we need to build the media for left wing or progressive, whatever word we're going to use, but we need to build that. We have a very weak media ecosystem right now. And even the elements that are considered left, like MSNBC, a lot of the people in there are people from administrations that opposed universal health care. And so that's a huge project that has to be built and done quickly. Right now, Trump is defunding NPR, and he's trying to take away the license from MSNBC, and they're doing incredibly aggressive actions to kill whatever we still have, and we have to fight that, and then we have to turn around and we have to build up a much more robust media structure that tells people that, hey, look, what's happening here with how many people go bankrupt every year because of health costs? It doesn't happen in other countries. That has to be discussed on a regular basis. It has to be a daily part of the conversation in the media so that people know that we're really getting screwed and we're getting ripped off, and the rest of the world is getting it way better than us. And that's a matter of messaging.
Yeah.
Rob,
No, Barbara, we really have got to respect the hand raising. Okay, please. Helen is up, then Michelle, then Lynn. Thank you. But you come into the queue, Barbara, if you have a question or a comment. Helen, you want to unmute, please? There you go.
Goes back by itself for some reason.
No, you're on.
There you go. Go ahead,
Okay.
Helen. Where are you from, Helen?
I am from the Bronx. I am a healthcare advocate.
Beautiful.
I'm working on the National Single Payer Day for May 31st, and I'm a member of Indivisible and a member of Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy, Bronx United Progressives, League of Women Voters even. And I'm also training people, doing it myself and training people to go to various community organizations and talk about the New York Health Act. My question is, this whole concept of the ecosystem that the right has built over 50 years, I find fascinating, intriguing, and brilliant. And I want to know it seems to me that this is the moment when we should start pulling in allies. In other words, we need a media ecosystem. Well, there are podcasts, there are Substacks, there are all Blue Sky. There are many new innovative communications networks that are being developed. And because the frustration with the corporate media that has been television and radio for so many years, how can we begin to reach out and pull in the pieces that we can integrate together to make this kind of new media voice? And the same thing to be said, of course, in the realm of economics, in the realm of law, in the realm of philosophy, and so on. What are we doing about the allies that would make this possible to develop at a reasonably quick rate?
Rob?
The problem is there's no real leaders. I really believe that a left-wing ecosystem or infrastructure needs to be both bottom up and top down. You need both, really. And having written a book and having had a radio show for 12 years called The Bottom Up Show, we need both. And there's no leadership. We don't have the leadership. We're certainly not seeing it from the leadership in the Democratic Party. And that's why I don't think that this infrastructure system should be specifically Democratic. It should basically help the politicians that are supporting the issues that we are advocating for, and that's the way it should be done. And that is there's a big difference. I mean, giving information, doing like the right does, and drafting legislation that could be introduced that would give us what we want. And I think this is a special opportune moment. It's a crisis. It's a moment of crisis, but it's also a moment of opportunity. And I really believe that the funding for this will not just come from the United States and people in the United States. I think there are a lot of people and a lot of organizations and even nations around the world that are looking at the United States now in horror, and they would embrace an operation like we're talking about here. And I know that the Center for American Progress has funding from multiple countries, from Saudi Arabia and England and Scandinavia and Canada. And I think we can do the same thing. We can get help from all around the world to advocate for the people.
Where do you feel that the Center for American Progress is not not a vehicle?
Well, Neera Tanden is running it. She basically opposed a universal health care when she worked for Obama. That's a start for and no starter. And they're very top down. They really have not done the job of building out an ecosystem or infrastructure. They've done what a think tank does, plus some policy promotion as well as that, and some responses to some of the issues going on, but they've not built the ecosystem that's really needed that coordinates. I mean, the left has a wonderful array of different organizations that if they could, Al Sharpton, when he was running for president, said that organizing Democrats is like herding cats. And that's a challenge, but I don't think it's an impossible one. I think we can do it. And I think that it'll take money to do it too. It'll, throw some organizational meetings and bring people together, get some good speakers and get some good food, and it'll happen. It was done before the Take Back America conference. What was put on for a number of years, and it brought together an incredible group of people, and it ended up and I think it ended when Obama was elected. But it was powerful, and I think these kinds of events can be done.
Yeah, I think the partners that we're talking about, just low hanging
Hi,
fruit.
Nahim Way. Good evening. It's me, Michael.
Well, wait, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, if you have a comment or question, if you could just raise your hand and get in the queue. We just need to keep some order to the meeting. Thank you. But just to answer your question a little bit, I mean, there are certain labor unions that are partners here that we need to embrace, like National Nurses United. There's the Poor People's Campaign, Working Families Party, Social Security Works, Indivisible, Justice Democrats, Move On. So there are a number of potential partners that we can reach out to that are not embedded, let's just say, within the Democratic Party. Let's keep going here with Michelle, then Lynn, then Cheryl. Michelle?
Okay. I guess what I sometimes see as an issue, not with progressives, but more with center left people and Democrats definitely, is they lack the will. Like at a certain point, the Republicans didn't have control of the presidency and the House and the Senate and the this and the that. But when they didn't say, oh, well, I guess the Democrats were right. I guess the progressives have a mandate. They've been given a mandate because Obama's president to do this and that. They were like, no, we're right. And we may not be in power now, but we're going to be in power at some point, and we're going to get things done in this way if we can't get things done in that way. And I feel like on the left, we lack that and stuff. Like I think of Gross, I hate them, but whatever. Moms for Liberty, who didn't go after the Senate or the House. They were like, we can win school boards. And if we can win school boards, we can influence our community and stuff. And we can get people get their feet wet on these school boards, so that if they want to run for something else, they can say, hey, I've been on school board. So like you go for where you can win, which may not be the big thing. It might be a smaller thing. And you're always planning. It doesn't matter even if you've lost, you've never really lost. You just keep pushing forward and stuff. And I feel like sometimes we don't have that. And I sort of understand why we don't have that, because honestly, I'll be honest, I feel very bitter with the outcome of the last election. And it's taking a lot of effort for me to actually want to get involved in anything while consequently feeling like I have to sign up for everything. Um, but I don't know what we can do to get that grit, I guess is what I would call it, to just power through no matter what and stuff. This is not me appreciating the right. That's not what I'm doing. But I feel sometimes like we beat ourselves up a lot. We complain a lot about what we can't do and what we don't have and and our message isn't perfect. Like, but there's no message that's perfect. We're going to try a bunch of messages and we're going to see what sticks and what gets us the most people and what gets us the most votes. And I think sometimes we strive for perfection to the point that we're not able to do the things we need to do because we're always looking to do the perfect thing instead of realizing that we just have to power through. Anyway, so that's not a question, but how can we do that? Now it's a question. Now it's a question.
Okay, so it sounds in part this is a question about electoral strategy, which we're not really so far explicitly addressing, Rob, are we? This idea of looking at opportunities, right, at lower level, if you will, local offices, Board of Education, town councils, and so forth. Opportunity centered is I think part of what Michelle's saying. And I should also give a shout out to Michelle. She's part of the Justice for All Network think tank that's helped to construct the presentation I made on the front end. So I just want to give a shout out to you, Michelle. Michelle has been a partner of mine and in presenting on a number of things. So thanks, Michelle, for being here and all that you do. Rob, what are your thoughts on Michelle's thinking about?
Our drafts all include grassroots, local consideration and development at a local level of people and training them and building them so that they can make things happen at a local level. That's an essential part of this. And I think it's one of the things that differentiates us from the right. I mean, the right has their organization for the state legislation, but we need to do it at a much more level of just grassroots in local communities. And there's some really good research on what makes for a healthy community that is very different than the way a lot of communities are going. And I think that's going to be an important part of our vision in doing this. We want to have a 50-year vision that what does it look like if we do all the things we want and we're successful? Free college, free health care, guaranteed minimum income. I mean, there are so many things that we can dream about, and it's doable. And it's not by necessarily electing Democrats, it's by developing policy ideas that can be embraced by politicians. And what we're trying to do is research issues that a good percentage of Democrats and Republicans both embrace and are attracted to. And that's the way it can be done without it being a Democratic thing, which I don't think it should be.
Yeah, and most Americans are now identify as non-aligned, independent. Most Americans do not identify either Democratic or Republican, right? It's above 50%. Let's see. Thanks for that, Rob. Appreciate it. And thanks, Michelle, for the question. Let's keep this brief. We've got just 10 minutes really before we want to wrap up. Just real quick questions, comment, and then let's keep rolling. Lynn, then Cheryl, then Michael. Lynn?
Yes, thank you so much. My biggest problem is from the 1990s after 9/11, all the Body, Mind, Spirit expos worldwide started to shut down. They were in every city. And we're talking massive sound therapies, art, music, singing, dance, movement therapies, acutoner, aromatherapy, all these. I have so many lists of there's family constellation counseling. I mean, what we're missing in healthcare, they don't even want to talk about. That's the power of big pharma and the drug wars. They have taken over so many systems with evil. I've got a bunch of information, but I've got hundreds. And then too, the cultures, real quick. The cultures I've worked with in Africa, the drumming, the singing, the dance, the Tibetan monks I've worked with, and the Indians. Oh my God, the sweats and the different dancing and different kinds of chants and the sweats and herbs. And come on. I mean, they're wiping all that out. And we got to advertise and market all of those things to have in every community. I put some of it in, like edible landscaping crews, even on parks. And I mean, the answers are within. There's no reason for hate or violence. We can help anyone, anywhere with EarthCam, earthcam.com. Come on. Cell phone, who are you? Let's find out who you are, why you're here, and get you some jobs, caring jobs. Thank you.
All right, Lynn, let's keep going. Cheryl, then Michael.
Yeah, okay. Somebody questioned whether we had the will, and I guarantee you there's so much will out there. I've been a little involved with Indivisible, and everybody's so frustrated they just don't know what to do.
Right.
And they don't want to be appendages to the Democrats, but they don't want to do much else. And I don't mean they don't want to do much else, but I mean, I'd like the progressive Dems like Merkley to declare independence like Bernie, but that's one of my issues. I just think Rob is right. We have to gather, as Helen asked, how do we gather all these elements together? We're so scattered. There's a lot of good media, but it's all really scattered. I think Rob is right that there has to be a top-down element somehow, somewhere. I don't know if it will come from the Dems. I don't know, but I think it's a terrific idea to keep working on this infrastructure thing, keep working on this organizational strategizing thing that you have brought up here tonight. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, and just to let you know, I'm planning to go for at least a few days up to Northeast Philly, where Rob is. I'm here in DC to finish out this document, this draft that we're working on. So, yeah, thank you so much, Cheryl. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I also just dropped a link in for folks to make donations to One Pair States. Go to our website if you're interested in getting involved. All of that, everything. We just want you to know that you've got a home here to work with, and we work on keeping an open mind and staying fluid and operating on our theory of change, which is that so much can be done at the local and state level. That's really where things are operating right now. Again, it's not on the radar screen of the national media, but we know that that's where it's happening right now. Michael, quick question?
Yeah, just quick comment. And also, we also think about, let's say in the comments, I mentioned that if the Democrats are not going to fight for Medicare for all, and you're right, Chuck and everybody, this is definitely a nonpartisan issue. We should always contact or find real allies. What I mean by real allies, we're talking real allies that have a history or have a record of fighting for human rights and equality, which is the UN, because the United Nations is about equality, human rights. It's not about corporations. So I feel like we should be taking a leap and calling the UN to speak volume to Congress, because the UN has a lot of influence, a lot of power that could possibly change, change the House of Representatives and senators' minds about their opposition to Medicare for all, and also getting money out of politics. Because with the money in politics, trying to work with Democrats, they're not going to change. It's like telling a dog stop barking, but 9 out of 10 times the dog is going to continue to bark. So it's same thing with the Democrats, because they're addicted to money for so many years, right? Especially in the last 40, 50 years. So you can't really help a drug addict. And very quickly is that, let's say we get to Medicare for at the federal state level, we always need to focus on the Supreme Court, what happens. Because let's say Medicare gets passed, right? What if the Supreme Court at the lower courts at the national level strike down Medicare for? What we're going to do next? So we had to look at the ACA as a model. When the ACA was upheld, but parts of the provisions got blocked or got weakened. So we had to keep in mind, we also had to be cognizant of that as well. And Chuck, I think Chuck, you'll be a great candidate for office. Have you thought about running for political office? Because I know you're very passionate about medical reform either at the federal state level, and I know you'll be a
Yeah,
great advocate.
well, thanks. I mean, I did run for U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania back in 2006, and it's an exhausting enterprise, 328 public events. But I was only away from my little kids for 2 days out of that 3 year run. So, but I don't plan to run again. But I appreciate it, Michael. Appreciate your comments. United Nations. I don't know that the Congress is going to listen to the UN. I just don't know. But
I mean,
let's
I
keep.
think they might because the UN is very powerful. They have a lot of powerful people on it. So you never know because the UN
Yeah,
has a
yeah,
strong record of emphasizing human rights and
yeah.
equality and liberation. And human
No,
rights, I don't think the UN takes any money from corporations, unlike Congress does.
yeah, yeah. I'm actually working on a world democracy project. I'm going to be in India at the end of this year. We're actually pushing out this concept of a global governance. My former boss, Alan Cranston, was the leader of the World Federalist Society. So I studied diplomatic history. That's where I got my doctorate. But thank you, Michael, for that. Let's
You're
keep that
welcome.
conversation going. Thank you, Mike Huntington, and then we'll put a wrap on this. Get some comments from Rob to wrap things up. Mike?
Yeah, before we go, I just want to let people know that next Friday morning, Wendell Potter will be speaking on many of these topics that we've just talked about, his investigations into our failing healthcare system and how we can get to universal healthcare state by state. 9 o'clock, and you'll be getting an invitation if you haven't already for a Zoom link. 9 o'clock Pacific.
Pacific.
9 Pacific, 12 Eastern. I mean, for those of you who don't know Wendell, amazing. Whistleblower, former insurance industry executive. Rob, do you want to put a wrap on things and sort of repeat, how folks can help or stay in touch or do what they can to support this project we're working on? Rob?
Yeah, sure. Drop me an email if you're interested in getting involved in this. Any ideas are welcome. Hopefully, Chuck and I are going to get close to finishing a proposal that we can start putting out there to other people. Over the years, I founded and organized a number of conferences, one on brain and neurofeedback, another on optimal functioning and positive psychology. It was the first one, and another on the art, science, and application of story, looking at all the different dimensions of it, from screenwriting to religion to lawyers to marketing and mythology. And each time I had speakers come and they never charged a fee. And I got really great names. And the way I did it was what I considered to be, I called it the bandwagon effect. I'd get some good names, good people, and that would get other good people to participate as well. And I would give the really top names a hotel room and an airfare, and that was about it. And it worked. And I think that that's what we have to do here. We have to build up to get good names to be involved in this and supporting it. I've got Tom Hartman as an endorser and an advisor of this, and we need to get people like that on board at different levels. And so, if you've got credentials and you want to put your name on it, and I would love to have that. If we can use your help for ideas and suggestions. I'm working closely with Chuck, and I'm kind of letting Chuck decide who gets to see what information generally. But I think, one thing that Trump is throwing away, billions and billions of dollars worth, is soft power. Now, there's hard power, which is the stick. Then there's the carrot, which is also hard power, which is money. And then there's soft power, which the first two work by bullying people and forcing them to do things. But soft power attracts, it seduces. And Joseph Nye wrote a book about this. He just passed away recently, and I had a chance to have a conversation with him about this. And soft power is the arts. Soft power is the American dream. Soft power is American music and movies, and it's doing good. It's building schools and hospitals instead of bombing them. And this is something, an advantage that I think that we on the left embrace, while I think Trump is unable to understand it because it requires trust and compassion. And I think this is a part of any kind of ecosystem and infrastructure that we need to include. And if we can do that, I think we're going to have a vision that includes heart and art and compassion. And we can do this, and we can do it so much better than the right has done theirs for their selfish reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, begins with radical visioning and then reverse engineering the question, how did we win? That's where we're working right now. And if you can't see it, you can't get there. You have to see it. You have to see it in your mind's eye. Thanks so much, Rob, for being a collaborator. Thanks everybody for being with us tonight. Thank you for your wonderful questions, your comments, your energy, and just keep firing away. Really, please, thank you. And support the work that we're doing here at One Pair States. You've got our contact information. This is a great project that we're working on. And